I sort of started looking beyond the school gates and I started to talk to other people who I felt were passionate about mental health and wellbeing. And I, at the time, set up my own cross sector community wellbeing action team. And what that really was in its essence was getting people together from the police, health organisations. Obviously, I came from education, but also sporting groups, community groups, and local organisations. And the drive for doing that was that I wanted to create, it was very much that top down solutions for mental health and wellbeing weren't happening and weren't working in our local environment. So I wanted to bring together people who felt that solutions weren't working and have real conversations, real shared conversations about what were the local issues, what wasn't working, and what could we do to create shared responsibility and local solutions that would actually work. Now, the driver for all of that was two real things. One, it was because the youth in our town and my students weren't getting the outcomes they needed. But the second was very much around belonging and connection. It was because the advantages of living in a rural community and that village approach kind of felt like it wasn't having the impact it always had. That whole advantage of living in a rural community and having supporting each other's back wasn't being lifted up, and that real need for belonging and connection wasn't being met. And so as I brought these people together for these shared conversations, they were the two pivotal roles that I was focused on achieving: improving youth outcomes for mental health and wellbeing, and really focusing on making and belonging and connection be a forefront for conversations around what we were doing in that space. Now, segued at the same time, and I will take a breath and let you ladies have a word.
I was just
This is
sitting here
good. This is
thinking,
so good.
and Renee
Yeah,
is self-professed, does not stop talking.
I know.
I've known her for a long time.
Especially when I'm talking passionate. But at the same time, as I became passionate about this, I set up this wellbeing action team, and that became very successful. We managed to access over $750,000 worth of funds for mental health and wellbeing in a town of 2,000 people for local outcomes. I decided to step out of my education role and set up this process so that I could help other communities do it. Now, what happened was, as I stepped out of that role and started to focus on this, obviously I left that connection I had to my workspace. But at the same time, youngest child, so as I mentioned, I have three boys, and we don't have year 11 and 12 in our local community, so they have to go to boarding for year 11 and 12. The middle son had gone up to boarding, and my eldest had left school by this time, and my youngest went off to boarding. And suddenly, not only did I not have a connection to the school from my work, I didn't have a connection from school with my son being there, and I no longer had a connection to junior sport. And for anyone who lives in a rural
Mm,
community, it was
yeah.
like my entire connection to my
Mm,
local community had completely disappeared. Now, at the same time, I was, it was probably a 2-year process when I first left education, and I'm just coming out of that. Like, I was grieving the loss of my educational role because although I wanted to do this, I'd been a
mhm,
teacher my whole life, and that's what I saw
mhm.
myself as. So I really stepped away from that. And then at the same time, farming has become very, very difficult.